Don't rush me.
I was expecting.
This is a very important moment. No, this is a very no. This is an important moment. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. This could either be the most amazing debate opening we've ever done, or the worst. But whatever's going to happen is going to be a train wreck.
Okay,
no.
I did not QC. We haven't heard this open yet, so we didn't QC it, so we don't know if it's going to be good.
Let's go.
In 3, 2.
Breaking news.
Here we go. 2024. Kamala Harris, Donald Trump.
We got a scene, a debate that's off the charts. Kamala's in the kitchen where the drama really starts. She's got her eye on the cats. Dinner's on her mind, but Trump's stepping in saying, this time. This just in, the battle's heating up. Kamala's got the cats, but Trump's had enough.
Oh my God, Kamala's got the cats. This is so good.
Dinner in this kitchen warfare.
Kitchen warfare.
All right, Carter, you're not fired.
Another day.
She's ready to attack, but Trump's bucked in her back. He's got ducks at his back. He's tossing out burgers, holding his ground. In this dinner debate, who's gonna come around? This just in, the battle's heating up. Kamala's got the cats, Trump's had enough. Start circling, chaos in the air. Who'll save
I can't wait for the bridge.
warfare.
Who's going to save the animals of America from the Haitians? Obviously, Kamala won't help.
Ducks are squawking, cats are in distress. Kamala's cooking plan is now anyone's guess. But Trump's in the way, defending his feast. This isn't just a meal, it's a political beast. Just in, it's heating up. Kamala's got the cats, Trump's had enough.
My
Ducks are
goodness.
circling, chaos in the air. Who'll save dinner in this kitchen warfare?
Who saved dinner?
Wow. Well,
That was AI.
AI for the win.
And our producer Carter,
Carter!
we were actually trying to find a good AI generated song, and Carter kept working it, and
Man.
and that's what
Wow.
came about. So this is why you guys tune in to CrossPolitic. We're the best chalk talk debate news show ever. That really died. It started strong and then really died.
I wonder if cats and dogs are on the menu tonight in the debate.
So
For real.
I got that. You got a plug here, but I got a couple thoughts about it. You get to the plug. I want to jump right into some thoughts.
Hey,
some pre-debate thoughts.
Discover which cultural issues you need to know about as a Christian and seeker of truth by listening to the weekly podcast Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons,
CEO of Classical Conversations.
I was going to read that. It's right there. Anyways, hosted by Robert Bortons, CEO of the world's leading homeschool support organization.
He's joining us today.
And joined by a prominent expert, author, or thinker. We're not sure which one. Each episode of Refining Rhetoric explores what it means to seek out biblical truth in a culture permeated with subjective truths. Listen to Refining Rhetoric wherever you stream your podcast, or learn more about the show by visiting classicalconversations.com/FLF. That's classicalconversations.com/FLF. And Robert Bortons is coming on the show here in a little while.
Yep.
Tell us what he's seeing over there in North Carolina.
Seconds and minutes. So
David
guys,
Reese is actually
one of the most important things you can do right now is actually share this link.
Oh, yeah.
Share the YouTube.
Like and share.
Like and share.
And then share and like again.
And then share and like again. We want to get to the front of YouTube's page today. ABC already made it. You guys can give us that CrossPolitic bump.
Can't believe it.
So take a minute right now before we get into the thick of it. We got all sorts of commentators and friends coming on throughout the debate. We're going to have Dusty Devers on. Robert Borton's already mentioned.
Dead
We're
Man
going to
Walken's
have Greg Moore. Dead Man Walken. One of
David
my
Reese.
fave. David Reese, William Wolf's going to be coming on, and so we got a
Virgil
bunch of
Walker
friends.
might show up.
Virgil,
He's watching
yeah.
right now, wondering if he wants to show up. I'm guessing.
He's kind of anonymously looking in the
Virgil,
background.
I have a word for you. I have a word.
As long as you have an offering.
Virgil, put your hand on that screen, Virgil. As long as you have an offering. That's funny. So take a minute to share the show, because we're going to be here through the debate. We're actually going to be talking through it. We'll pause it so you won't miss as much as we talk through it, and should have a good time. Make sure you get some. I sent an email out today. Make sure you get your popcorn, your Dr. Pepper or Scotch, and enjoy the show.
Popcorn and Dr. Pepper.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Really? That's a thing.
Also, Dr. Pepper and cigars.
Yeah, right. Well,
I didn't believe you, but you're right about that, Gabe.
I know.
You have said that many times.
You are correct.
It's a great combo.
Yeah.
So,
but what are you drinking, Knox?
I don't know. but Gabe poured me one time like this coffee liqueur and
mixing stuff
some
over
whiskey
there a minute ago, like you were a bartender.
Amazing.
Yeah,
this is amazing.
Okay,
I'm gonna need it for tonight.
A friend bought that mix for us, and it was super interesting.
Coffee liqueur and what's the other thing?
And scotch, basically. So
scotch.
Yeah, so it's an interesting deal, and I'll be getting in some Jameson later.
Maybe a little bit later. Maybe I will.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick before we start bringing our friends in, let's go around the room, kind of give your 2-minute kind of play-by-play what you think's going to happen and synopsis of kind of who's going to win.
Okay,
Toby,
who's going to win?
Yeah.
This is a big part of this is entertainment value.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Preach. We're in a place where it is, if you take this seriously, this is an incredibly embarrassing night. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because what they say is not going to work.
Because I think there's going to be very little substance said. I could be surprised, but I don't think there's going to be much of substance said. I think there's going to be a lot of rhetoric. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of the usual trading of comments, accusations, jabs, barbs. I do hope that Trump continues. I think I've noticed, from a lot of, I don't watch all his speeches and stuff, but sure. I think from the attempted assassination attempt, it seems like there's been a bit of a sobering on his part.
Yeah.
And I hope to see a little bit more of that.
Oh yeah. Way more of that.
And I think, and with some of his, still some of his, he's so quick on his feet.
Yes.
He's clever.
Yeah.
He's funny.
Yeah.
He plays to the crowd. I think, I'm looking forward to that. And I would be very pleased with, him hitting some of the, down the middle, conservative bona fides.
Yeah.
Right. I'd love to hear him talk about how Democrats want to, deliver living babies and kill them.
Yeah.
I hate that, and that needs to be talked about more and more.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd love to hear.
And to be fair, he even talked about it even after he flip-flopped last week.
I'd love to hear him talk about the way the socialist schemes of the hard left has. They want to take the most money from those people who have been the most fruitful with it and have worked the hardest for it. Yeah. And I think that needs to be touched on. I hope he talks about the need for us to be free.
Okay.
And
yeah. Okay. So Pastor Toby gets more than 2 minutes, obviously. Knox.
I preach sermons.
And 2 minutes.
I don't know why you said 2 minutes for a preacher. They ain't never seen 2 minute endings ever. Ever.
I'm working on his sanctification.
Yeah. No, that's not the area to start. That's for sure. Man, this is interesting because this is a very serious moment in America's history. I believe that. I believe we're at a very unique place. But so there's a whole bunch of things I think that are moral issues that I just kind of, I don't want to put those to a side, but I don't think anybody's decisions are going to be made off this debate.
Right.
I really don't think that. I think people have their minds kind of made up. Usually debates are kind of fighting for that 30% gooey that haven't really made up their minds. You got your hard right, you got your hard left.
So no one's going to debate hard right, hard left.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I think this is Trump's debate to lose because Trump has been doing an amazing job of being out in front of people, with people, talking to people, going on podcasts. We know what Trump believes. We know what he wants. We've seen Trump kind of go for Amendment 4 and then adjust and change from Amendment 4. So we actually have, I think Trump's the champion walking into this debate. I really do. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier was I think a lot of people want to see old Trump.
Yeah.
As much as they like the more settled and mature Trump since the assassination attempt,
I think he's 74 years old.
I think people
Trump
want to see him go off in a lot of ways and do some of the old Trump because people are looking at a different level of wickedness that's closer to them than it's ever been before. And they want to know that we have the guy who can get us out of this.
Yeah.
They want to know that we really have a leader. And I think Trump is going to have to show a lot of people in the conservative movement, not for the purpose of knowing that they have a better candidate than Kamala, but to know that they have somebody who's going to get them through the junk.
Give them more confidence.
He's going to have to give them a boost of confidence in this debate. I feel like I'm a sports commentator right now. It's so weird. But I really do believe that. I think
Trump's got a good left jab.
Trump should focus less on Kamala and way more on talking to the people and letting them know, I got you. Here's what you've been missing and not having me rule for the last 4 years. Wouldn't it be great to have this back again? Now, I'm not a huge fan of Trump. I don't think everybody knows that. But boy, we'll feel pretty good to see a man with some testosterone talk like it.
Yeah, it's true.
And not be soft with some of the answers and just go for it.
So here's my thoughts real quick. First of all, I actually surprised myself today. So
was that 2 minutes?
Someone was talking about,
like you were preaching.
So yeah, it was good.
You preached too, man.
Someone asked me, and I said, I'm actually at peace with Kamala or President Trump becoming president. I'm there. I'm ready for the Lord to do His work. We've been waiting for a whole year. For this decision.
Bring on the judgment, Jesus.
Let's do it. Either way.
You've been reading Ecclesiastes.
Proverbs today. It was Proverbs. So I'm there.
It doesn't matter what you do, and everything falls apart.
And if Trump focuses on cats, economy, and his assassination, I think those are the things he needs to hit. The cat thing, just because it's in everybody's face right now, and everyone knows it's a problem, and the mainstream media just lied for a 24-hour news cycle saying cats weren't dying and ducks weren't dying.
Hey, I was going to say ducks' lives matter too.
Yeah. So Trump's play should be, hey, they want to kill your babies, they want to kill your cats, they want to kill your ducks. I mean, you should connect it all to abortion.
It's sad that we have more memes coming out about cats than babies. I would say that
100%.
Yes.
And so I think the problem is
David Reese is over there cracking up at something. I don't know what it is, but he's over there dying.
He's like, come on, put me in.
He's like, I'm ready to go.
Put me in.
Hurry up, Gabe. 2 minutes.
Trump and Kamala. So Kamala and Trump have both lied in this last year. Okay. They both flip-flop. Trump, even on the Amendment 4, flip-flop just recently on abortion. Now, while I do think Kamala's lies are far more nefarious and wicked, this goes back to my overall assessment. The Democratic Party is full of liars, and the Conservative Party is full of cowards. But problem is, you got a little mixture in Trump. He's not a coward, but he has lied. He has said things that weren't true, and he's denied things, and he still hasn't owned Operation Warp Speed. So there's some things that he's not going to answer that. He's not going to need to answer that in this debate. He's going to avoid all that. But I think largely, if Trump focuses on economy, cats, and he still needs
ducks.
He still needs to press Kamala Harris on two things I would like to see him press him on. One is like, where's my assassination report? This is your administration. This is your FBI. Where's my assassination report? And then number two, he needs to press her on is you weren't democratically elected in your own party. What makes you think you're going to be a Democratic president? So those would be the two things I think honestly just need an answer from Kamala Harris on.
Can we get to Greg Moore and David Reese right now? We got 5
minutes before the debate starts. So let's get
2 minutes from those guys.
Let's get 2 minutes and Robert. Bring Robert in too, because I know Robert's only got about 20 minutes with us. So let's start with Robert Bortons, and then let's go to David Reese, and let's go to Dead Man Walking. Robert, 60 seconds or less. Go.
Yeah, it's the fourth quarter. Trump's in the lead. He's just got to hang on, so don't do anything dumb tonight. Stay in the middle. I mean, obviously, as you get closer to the election, you want to talk to those 3% that are going to decide it, and it's going to come down to Pennsylvania, so drill, baby, drill.
I like Robert. Robert was ready for that. David, go.
I'm going to be playing a drinking game. I'm going to take a drink every time they suggest the government do something that's actually constitutional.
You're not going to have any alcohol.
You will be in sin.
You're not going to have any alcohol.
The most boring commentator who is the most sober that is possible. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be reading the Constitution the whole time.
Okay. Oh, we have a Constitution check right here with Reese.
Constitution.
David, I love that.
I love that game.
Yeah. That's really funny. Greg Moore, 60 seconds or less, 10 words or less.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me. And David, yes, you are definitely going to be sober tonight if that is the case. I think Trump has to remember what got him to the dance. One of you guys were saying earlier you want to see a little bit, I think it was Knox, old Trump. If he sticks to talking points, 30-second sound bites, he's going to play right into Harris's game. She will look much, much better. He needs to have that, you're lucky I'm not in charge because you'd be in jail with Hillary Clinton type moment.
Yeah.
And I would like to see a little bit more of that. But all over, I agree with all three of you guys. He's got to tie it back to the basics and not play her game of talking points.
How do you see the timing of this whole like Ohio cat thing? To me, it's kind of funny that it's just blowing up this week.
Right.
It's the debate of Kamala Harris in 2021.
Look at that.
Oh.
Trump cats for Trump. Do we have the MAGA? A cat wearing a MAGA hat? It's pretty funny. But you had Kamala Harris, who actually in 2021 said, "Oh, we let 150,000 Haitian immigrants in already." That was back in 2021.
Right.
And so she's got direct connection to this current problem in Ohio. I don't know. How do you guys kind of see this whole cat thing as it plays out in the debate tonight?
We'll start with you, Robert.
If it plays out in debate tonight.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to be brought up in the debate tonight unless Trump's able to tie it in with the illegal immigrants and just the fact that their cultures clash with ours and the continued, third world groups coming in and taking jobs away from Hispanics and African Americans and lower class white people. So it's all about the jobs, and the job market's terrible right now.
Did you say they were taking black jobs? That's what I heard.
No, I did not say that.
David, go ahead.
I mean, I understand where the Haitians are coming from. Cats are delicious. And what I'd like, here's what I'm thinking, right? So I think that my views on immigration probably line up with both of the candidates. That we should have basically the free movement of peoples, execute blasphemers and idolaters, and have no welfare. I think those would go over very well. I think the electorate would generally side with what I have to say there.
Yeah, where is that in the Constitution, David? I was just wondering.
Well, look.
You need to take a drink.
You got to take a drink, man.
Find one that's in the Constitution.
What I say has no bearing on what I'm drinking.
Greg, go ahead, man. Oh, save my life, vote Trump. Okay.
Yeah, I think when Gabe says, I think it's funny, there is no coincidences when it comes to mainstream media and the elites controlling the narrative. Yeah. I mean, this coming out about the cats, like Obama's chief of staff famously said, you don't let any crisis go to waste. Mm-hmm. And that includes the crisis of Harris having to debate tonight. Yeah. So they'll put any story forward that they can to keep your mind distracted and off of it.
Right.
I think we just need to stay true to what is within reach here in the next 60 days.
Mm-hmm. I'll just say that the childish cat ladies are going to have to either vote for Trump or just be childless.
There goes the man.
Joe Garrissey in the comment section is wondering if David Reese has any thoughts on making armor for cats for Trump.
If anybody wants to pre-buy 10,000 units, I would have to
gladly manufacture that. Spoken like a true businessman.
We will continue with our other R&D projects.
David, just so you know, Peter might raise that money. Peter might raise that money.
Is Peter for Trump now?
He's green. I will take it.
Peter for Trump?
Oh my goodness! Oh, look at this Springfield City. This is what it's come to.
Awesome. Where's that video of the cats doing the high wire?
Yeah, let me just remind y'all, like and share this stream wherever you're watching on YouTube or X or wherever. Please like and share the stream. The debate is about to start. I think any minute.
Yeah, and there's no opening comments, so they're just going to jump right into questions.
No opening statements.
I think it's a great setup for the debate. Yeah. And so let's get right into it. Go live.
Yeah. Oh, William Wolf is here. Hey, William. How you doing, bro? What's up?
I was invited to join.
Good evening, I'm David Bueller, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC.
Why not the audience?
Around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
How weird with no audience.
Kamala Harris.
Seriously.
I'm Kamala Harris.
Welcome
really?
to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to start tonight with an issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. They would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all, in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
If only.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns. We got masks. We did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Okay. Hold on one second. William Wolf is here. Dusty Devers is here. David Zions is here. What an amazing lineup. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. I want to start with Wolf. Why don't you go ahead? First things that come to your mind after the first setup.
Well, I think that Trump was absolutely right to come out of the gate going after immigration. He named Aurora, Colorado. He named Springfield, Ohio. There's other towns that he could have named. But outside of the economy, I think this really is one of the most animating issues for the Americans in this election. Will we be safe and secure in our own hometowns, or will they be taken over by Venezuelan gangs and cat-eating Haitians? I wish he had said cats. He almost did, but he didn't say it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Hey, Dusty, you just got here. Were you able to hear some of that? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, look, this whole debate right now on immigration and border security and economy and jobs and law and order is kind of front and center. And Kamala showed that she had to deal with that, even though she's awful on this, and that her advocation of a compassionate immigration system is just going to bring us lawlessness. It's going to tear down hardworking Americans, and it's going to violate the very principles of life, liberty, and property that we find. And I think Trump is going to be right to go after it. Like William, I wish he would have talked about the ducks and the geese and the cat. But, you know, maybe that'll come in the future.
Yeah. He's not done. Maybe he needs to tie cats and geese to abortion.
Yuntz, I want to go back to you, and then, guys, if you want to jump in here for a second, go ahead. Yuntz? Davis?
Hey, brother.
Hey, man. Were you able to hear some of that? Anything spark?
Barely. I just got here. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're good to David Reese, I saw you cracking up so hard. What was the joke that you were laughing at?
I don't even know. I mean, there were so many things that they said that were hilarious that it was hard to keep track. So I think the issue is just that this is some sort of a sick joke that we're watching this for the debates for the presidency, and the absence of any sort of concern for thinking about things that are actually constitutional. I mean, Donald Trump claims credit for creating jobs. I mean, who creates jobs? The private sector creates jobs, and the government creates jobs. It's a tragedy, and so those type of things. I mean, he's obviously vastly superior to Kamala Harris, but still, there's the general state-olatry that exists where there's this pretense that government is the causer of things, as though we lived in a society where the government is the source of economic well-being. The entire American experiment is supposed to be a defense of the idea of free markets.
So, David, just for the record, have you taken a drink yet?
I have not. I'm not noticing any constitutional.
No mention of the Constitution.
If you're taxes, I suppose would be constitutional. So
cutting taxes.
What's lowering taxes? Yeah. That's constitutional.
Okay, you got to take a drink.
Drink.
All right, guys. If you want to jump in at any point, go ahead and let us know. But I want to get back to their next what keeps going on. Yeah, keep going, guys.
Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
Isn't Goldman Sachs wealthy?
What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit.
Hey, pause it real quick.
16 Nobel laureates.
All Trump's response needs to be is, you've been here 4 years and it hasn't worked.
Sure.
That's it.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes.
Hit play.
Have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Oh, it's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say.
That muted mic don't
work. I went
work.
to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like four sentences. Like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that he just, we'll try to lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Run, spot, run.
I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The vice president brought up your tariffs.
That's what we need to see tonight.
Let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that she was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID?
President.
No, she didn't. First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. If she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump often touted that you were able to kill.
Hold on. Pause real quick. Just quickly. Anybody, guys, I'm not going to say much. Anybody got anything you want to jump in here real quick before we move to abortion?
Yeah, I mean, if I was Trump, I'd hit on that $400 billion that it costs every single year to house and feed these illegal immigrants, and how that's taking up housing that could be sold. So the housing crisis, deport 10 million people who shouldn't be here, solved.
Yeah, really quickly, too, I want you to notice the doublespeak with Harris. She's the people's candidate, but then she's mentioned corporations 3 times and then backs her economic policy plan up with Goldman Sachs, a big bank.
Right.
And I agree with Gabe. Trump needs to go, hey, you've had 4 years to do it. Why are you standing here now promising you're going to do something when you could have done it the last 4 years? And finally, Deadman Walking Podcast, we'll be selling Run Spot Run t-shirts by the end of the night.
There we go. There we go.
Make sure you put them in the chat room.
All right. Anybody else up? I'm going to get to this abortion question.
Said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years.
Literally.
Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump
aren't supposed to be
hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next.
Oh,
that is immoral.
Stop.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular, the freedom to make decisions about one's own body,
except for COVID,
should not be made by the government.
Okay,
thank you, Vice President Harris.
Dusty, you're in office right now. Let's say you're running for president. How would you respond to Harris right now?
Oh goodness, where to start? Well, I think it's very clear that I differ with Donald Trump on his position, but maybe. I would say, look, the body inside a woman's body is not her body, and unless we give equal protection to all lives, then we won't protect the most vulnerable among us. Then we really have no stance that says who should be protected, whose life, whose liberties, whose property should be protected. Because at some point, if the government says that a life is not a life, when every biology book and God says, and even, you can see it in our 14th Amendment and across the states, most states have positions that show that life begins at conception and all lives should be protected. So I would take up the ownership and say, I would bring an abortion ban across the nation, and not just abortion ban as it stands in these 12 to 19 states that have it right now, but I would ban it and treat every life with equal protection under the law. If I was Trump and I was responding to her, I would say, absolutely, I'm the most pro-life president that's ever been, like she said he was. Absolutely, I would bring out a ban for abortion across every from a federal level. And absolutely, I would seek to protect all lives. But he's not going to do that because he has exceptions. He talked about exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I really think that he started getting these talking points from pro-life institutions. Yeah. And he doesn't understand. This hasn't been a major issue for him. So he has consistently not had good answers, and he has to walk back his positions on them. Mm-hmm. So with all that being said, this isn't a big deal for him. It is a big deal for me, and I think most of the Christians that are on the call. I recognize I stand before God in everything that I say from a legislative position, but not just that. In my own heart, in my own mind. And this is not where I think any position that we've heard a presidential candidate recognize. They haven't said, I stand before God, not the ballot box first. I have a fear of the Lord, not a fear of the culture or the ballot box or anyone else. And the truth is, Trump just came out as pro-choice in a measure of pro-choice. He's taking his talking points from big pro-life, which is essentially taking their talking points from big pro-choice as far as they'll let them go.
Yeah. So, Dusty, I know you probably got a couple minutes left with us. So just you can just go out when you need to. Davis, what's the legality of abortion right now? I mean, the commentator piped up when Trump was talking about Governor Virginia talking about, well, if we have a baby and we set it aside and we're going to talk with the mother about should we kill it or not. He did reference a real quote. So he wasn't at least lying about the quote, but what's the legality? Is there kind of a 9-month abortion in certain states?
There is. We still have states with partial birth abortion. And you also have the issue of, a child being born alive, a late term child being born alive, and then medical providers at abortion clinics or otherwise allowing the baby to die in front of them. That's not hyperbole. That happens. It's not being prosecuted in many places, but under these extreme laws, like what happened in Ohio, like they're pushing for in Florida, you will see abortion being legal up to 9 months. So you will have perfectly, absolutely viable, capable of living outside the womb children who are being permitted to die or are being killed as they're being born. So that's not extreme. And I was encouraged to hear Trump talk about that and start to explain how extreme the Democratic Party is and how desiring they are of this level of child sacrifice. But ultimately, we have to go back to basic principles. This is about the due process of law. But look, let's go back and look at history. The pro-life movement, before it became just taken over with corporate interests and other things, at its heart, when it was focused on saving children's lives, the pro-choicers used to lose, and they would say the fetus beat us. They would literally say the fetus beat us because the focus was on the child and life. The talking points have completely changed now. We spend all this time talking about reproductive rights and using fake stories about women being denied medical care and miscarriages and all of ectopic pregnancies, all of that. Those are fake talking points. Those are extreme situations. There are not really, truly honest doctors that are going to refuse to treat a woman who's having a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy. Those are very different situations. They are rare. No woman should be in fear of being, or doctor should be in fear of being prosecuted in any state in the country under those circumstances. That is rendering medical care. But it is not wrong to say that there are children who are viable, fully viable outside of the room that will be allowed to die and are being allowed to die or being actively killed as they're being born in these states that allow late-term abortions.
Okay, William, I'm going to ask you a question. I want to go to Trump's answer here, but I want to ask you the question because you worked in the Trump administration in the past. I want to ask you, what's going on with Trump's flip-flops and his assessment of this whole pro-life language he's been using and so forth. What's his, has he been evolving or, it seems like to us he's been flip-flopping and so forth, but I want to get to Trump's response first.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute there. So,
hang on, William. I want to go to Trump's response first and then have you comment. Yep.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart.
Literally.
And they wanted it back in the states, and I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no,
I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond. But I do want to ask, would you support
William, what's kind of been, at least to my ears, evolution of kind of some back and forth of Trump on the life issue?
Yeah. Okay. So I could preach against Kamala's position and Trump's position and get a lot of amens from your audience, or I could try to give you what I think is actually objective analysis on where I am reading Trump is on this position.
That's what I want. Yeah.
I'll try to do that. This is not to be taken as an endorsement for all the people who are going to skewer me for it. Look, I think what we're seeing right here is a man who this is not a top issue for him. It never has been. It wasn't a top issue for him when he ran in 2016. It's not a top issue for him, now. And what I'm seeing, honestly, is quite frankly a little bit of a uncomfortableness. The guy so desperately just wants to get out of the conversation.
Yes.
So what we are maybe taking, or what sounds like flip-flops, is this is what I think it is. Trump has been discipled by the major pro-life organizations to try to adopt a position on abortion and pro-life issues that is now somewhat incoherent in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned. He thought the most important thing he could do for this constituency that he sought to represent was get Roe overturned, right? That and quite frankly, on the Weeks issue, Susan B. Anthony list, while they are supporting Amendment 4 against Amendment 4 in Florida, they have been saying 15 weeks. You have to keep in mind when we talk about the idea of a national abortion ban, it would be a 15-week ceiling. That's not what we want, like a 15-week floor. Like if they were to pass something at the federal level, it would be 15 weeks. That's what Lindsey Graham wants. That's what they've talked about before. I actually wouldn't want to see that because that would hurt state level efforts to bring it down and actually abolish abortion. So I'd say there's a position there where the idea of a 15-week ban at the federal level isn't something that really any of us here would support, quite frankly. And so again, what sounds like flip-flops is Trump just trying to get out of a position he doesn't care about, say, I did what you wanted. Let's move on to the economy. Let's move on to immigration. I wish Trump cared about it more. I wish he would go on the attack more. I wish, as Dusty said, that he recognized the moral and theological issues at play here with the life of an unborn baby. That's just not clearly who Trump is. We're not going to get blood from a stone on this issue right now. And so, quite frankly, from now to November, I think it's going to be continually incoherent messaging from him on it. Some things that sound good to us and some things that as Christians who want to see abortion abolished, we aren't going to like.
I think that's really good, William.
Like and share the show. Appreciate you all on the line with us. I just want to tell you, we're going to be feasting on God's word, laughing with friends, and fighting with joy on Reformation Weekend at the Fight, Laugh, Feast Prodigal America Conference this fall. What better way to ring in the 2024 presidential election? It's coming up. It's the weekend right before the election. Join us October 31st and November 2nd. Get your tickets today at prodigalamerica.com. We've got Dusty Devers is going to be speaking, George Grant, Steve Dace. We'll be doing a live CrossPolitic show. The theme is Prodigal America. Where does America need to repent? So
on abortion.
Get your tickets today, prodigalamerica.com, and like and share this stream if you're enjoying it.
David and Greg, I want to get to you guys. Oh, you got to leave, Dusty. You got to do your thing.
Okay,
all right,
Dusty.
Salute, Dusty. Thank you for coming, brother.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And I would agree with what William said about Donald Trump, and I think that's what I was affirming as well. Even though we all, I think, on this line would like to see a truly Christian position of equal protection as God would have us, and abortion abolished. I don't think that that's a major issue for Donald Trump.
I agree.
I think that you haven't heard him use the language of rape, incest, and life of the mother as coherently as he did tonight, and that tells you that he has been talking to big pro-life. And really, I'll just say this last. What I would love to hear from a presidential candidate is something that we have heard from many presidents well in the past. We need a solemn day of prayer and fasting and repentance in our land for numerous sins, and principally for turning away from a fear of the Lord and bowing to other gods and entrusting our nation to these other pagan ideologies. And we need to turn to the Lord. And if God sends judgment on us, which some would say we are in a form of judgment right now, then we'll know where it's coming from, because our foundations are being eroded. And it's not because of the left, first and foremost. It's because God's people have not stood up and done what God demands. And I've said this recently, but like Francis Schaeffer said, every abortion mill should have a banner over it that says, open by permission of the church. I think that most of our civil governing spheres should have a sign over them that says pagan by permission of the church.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, I'm happy you leaving.
Go.
All right, yeah, I see how you dropped that on us and head out.
You better go now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to the Trump's responding to Kamala now, or is it Kamala's
responding to Trump?
Okay.
Any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans.
That's not what Young says.
Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing,
He's making it worse.
You should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
That's his
Why don't you answer that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
answer the question. Would you veto?
Mute her mic. Do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security.
David and Greg, go ahead, shoot. Because I'm going to say something I probably shouldn't say.
Well, very quickly, if you don't mind, David. Davis is absolutely right. I live in Michigan. We passed Proposal 22-3 with 57% of the vote. It was a constitutional amendment that says a woman has a constitutional right to terminate a baby up to the moment of birth or after if it helps protect her mental health. It is vague on purpose. You can go look it up. Wikipedia is fine, but you can go look it up. Michigan Proposal 22-3. 57% of my fellow Michiganders voted for that mess, along with being able to transition a teenager or minor without parental consent if they go to a teacher. You can look into that too. That was part 4 of this 5-part proposal. So what she is saying, Harris is saying, is absolutely a lie. It is legal in the state of Michigan. Wow. It has been done. It's vague on purpose. If a woman goes to a doctor and she's in her 8th or 9th month and says, my mental health is suffering because of this baby, rip it out of me. It's absolutely legal. And in that proposal, you cannot prosecute the woman at all. So I don't know what they're talking about here. All you have to do is go to my state. I was part of trying to defeat that, but 57% of the depraved people in my state decided that they're okay with infanticide.
Man,
mental health.
God have mercy.
Reese.
Yeah, no, this whole discussion, I mean, I'm not kidding. I feel physically ill about the level of absurdity of the discussion that's going on here, right? Any sort of serious effort to resist this murder. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of people having been murdered since Roe v. Wade. We are dealing with, when you look at, President Eisenhower using the 101st Airborne to integrate a high school, right? Why not use the 101st Airborne to stop the murder camps, right? Like stop the murder facilities, stop the abortion, the facilities of murder that are ongoing where paid assassination is going on. The 14th Amendment guarantees that guarantees that law will be equally applied to citizens. The fourth article of the Constitution in Section 4 guarantees Republican government. Republican government is rule of law, the protection of life. The president should be willing to go in and intervene and stop. So what we're seeing about this idea that there's nothing to be done, that the president shouldn't do anything. I mean, I understand the fact that this is not important to President Trump, and that's horrifying. It's horrifyingly wicked. Yeah. It should be important to him. And what needs to happen is an aggressive assertion here. She's totally powerless because you can't do anything to stop the emotional manipulation when you're not willing to say we're talking about killing baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what was making me so frustrated about that whole back and forth. It was like, Trump, you're just playing into her hands.
Right.
This is stupid.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I would have been able to get past the idea of her using the word woman. What is that?
Yeah.
Define that for me. You keep saying this word woman. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
What is a woman? All right, let's get back to that. I want to see where we're going here.
It's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country.
Wow.
That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course
he almost
of his
got
rallies,
assassinated.
he talks about fictional characters.
Ain't no one coming to yours. Might as well go to Trump's.
He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. Yes. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's very
even when I get shot, they still
make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
Wow. I just want to clarify.
That was a tactical mistake from her.
Ohio.
That was a tactical mistake from her.
Reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed.
Nobody trusts you. Nobody believes you.
People on television. People on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
He's debating with the host.
The Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
hold on, this is really important.
Yeah.
They just talk about extreme.
Pause it.
They're debating.
They're getting caught up in it.
Yeah.
Trump is on the ground saying, listen, I'm talking to the people, and here's what they're telling me.
My pets got eaten.
Yeah. And this is what's going on locally.
We can show you the report.
Say it again, David.
No pets were eaten. We can show you the report.
Yeah, exactly. And then they go and get the news who's like, there's no evidence of that.
The city official.
The city official. They just
notice that difference again. Greg said this earlier. The Democrats always talk about being among the people.
Yeah.
Right.
And who do they cite as authorities? The officials
and all
Goldman Sachs and city officials.
Yep.
And Trump's actually talking to people on the ground.
Yeah.
We have somebody coming on Thursday.
We got a pastor Springfield, Ohio.
In Springfield, Ohio.
He's got a whole saga about what's going on.
Guys, you going to jump in here anywhere before we go back?
Well, I mean, I got something to say.
Go ahead, William.
I mean, look, I think it's like we're lagging, right? So I'm also watching the reactions in live time on X, and the moderators continue to keep this game up where they're fact checking Trump and they're not fact checking Kamala. But I want to say this. I don't think Trump's doing the best, but what I do hope gets clear to the American people is that with this debate moderation, it's clearly Trump versus the Democrats and the media. If you have the eyes to see it, it's on clear display tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, 3 on 1.
Well said.
Go ahead, Davis.
I was just going to say, when she talks about laws to enforce the border, we don't need more laws about the border. We don't need more laws on illegal immigration. They're there. They just need to be enforced by the executive branch.
We don't need Congress to act on it. We just need people to do it. That's exactly
Davis,
right.
Stop bringing logic into this.
Let's get back to the debate.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
Here comes
and
RFK
if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation.
Look at my
They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you have no problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it, because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually really coming down in this country.
Wow. Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you
way to go.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York, every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
do what they're doing
to stop him.
Hold on, hit pause real quick. David, what did you say?
She's saying that she's worried that he might do what they're currently doing to him.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
They're weaponizing the system. I mean, the selective enforcement garbage where they just take these laws and go chase them down. If they can do it to a billionaire who is
that's right,
the former president and honestly the legitimate president now, right? If they can do it to him, then they can do it to anybody, right? This entire system, we all commit 7 felonies, 3 felonies, whatever it is a day. This ridiculous set of laws where everything's illegal so that everybody's a criminal so you can punish anybody, right? That's what they're going after him. And they had to go after him on garbage stuff still, even though I'm sure you can find any one of us guilty of any number of bogus felonies. I mean, it's just the hypocrisy and wickedness is just so thick.
Davis, what's your
William?
update?
I see you, William. We're coming to you.
Davis, what's your update on all kind of the lawfare that's been going on with Trump? Kind of give us a quick kind of 2-minute summary if you can.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely right. The classified documents case in Florida was thrown out. That's the presidential immunity issue, which is established law. The New York case where he was convicted of the felonies under New York state law, sentencing has been delayed until after the election. That will give him time to file appeals. That a case like that typically does not result in prosecution in New York or anywhere else unless there are a whole bunch of other white collar underlying crimes, which aren't the case in Trump's case. The most dangerous case for him probably isn't the Georgia election interference case, which has a lot of issues. It's probably the case in D.C. that has to do with, allegations of insurrection, fomenting an insurrection. And it's only the most dangerous case for him that's still out there percolating because the judge is extremely progressive and the jury pool will be made up of people who are from D.C. So from a legal exposure standpoint, that's the most dangerous case.
Right. And that's, Davis, that's where all the January 6ers were tried, basically, were in the D.C. courts with those judges.
That's right.
Yeah. William, I see that you're loosening your tie a little bit. Let it loose.
Let me get in here.
No, David Reese is exactly right. And unfortunately, again, this is where I wish Trump had some stronger answers, because really, once the lawfare started in against Donald Trump, I think this election really took on an order of magnitude significance that many people just keep forgetting. I mean, they are trying to prosecute and put their political opponent away behind bars so that he can't take the White House in a way that we've really never seen before in the American nation. And if they can do it to Trump, they will do it to us. That's the entire point of this. There have been two major turning points in this election that the media has done everything to bury, and that's the start of the lawfare and the assassination attempt against Trump. I would highly recommend an article by Michael Anton at Compact Magazine that he wrote a couple years ago called "They Cannot Let Him Back In." And you have to realize, like, the reason they're doing this is because Trump poses an existential threat to them, exposing their crimes, their real misdeeds, and the possibility of prosecuting them righteously if he gets back in. I mean, this is so important that Trump beats these allegations and, quite frankly, I think gets reelected for the sake of the judicial system in the United States of America.
It's crazy to me, and then we'll hit play again. It's crazy to me that Trump doesn't answer and say, yeah, they're going after me, the lawfare, the New York, they're all Democrats going after me. And then they tried to have me assassinated because none of that worked.
He hasn't mentioned it yet.
No, but it's like that's a punch.
Greg, did you have anything before we go back? And I want to say something real quick.
Okay.
I would just agree with William. He was absolutely right. I wonder what the average American that's watching this right now, seeing media and the Dems versus Trump, with them fact checking him and not her. What are they thinking? Do they see it? I know we all see it. We're all intelligent people here. Is the average voter seeing this? And will that help or not? And you got to notice that the establishment hates Trump because he doesn't play those games. He doesn't play the games with the bureaucracy. He'll just fire you. And there's a handshake deal. And I'm sure Williams understands this, working in D.C., where, hey, man, we all keep our jobs. We all keep the pay coming in. We all keep our power, whatever we have to do, whether it's Dem or Republican. So the establishment doesn't like him on that level. Obviously, the elites don't want him in there because, like William said, he's going to turn on them and prosecute him. But even the lower level bureaucrats are going, he has no loyalty to the system, to the corrupt system. He'll just fire you. So all good stuff.
Him talking about firing is like Trump at his best. Like, that was amazing.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, let's get back to the debate. I'll save my stuff.
In your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation.
We do a lot
that went
Hurry up, cut him off. He's talking about assassination.
President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother. who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done. Protecting seniors from schools have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
Except for babies.
And name calling. The true measure of the leader
what can
is
be
the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. You don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot of
are not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Solar's horrible. I'm a big fan.
We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy.
Here goes
and the
Jane
role of the president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully, that's true, and patriotically. Yeah. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer. That should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, What about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it. But let me just ask you, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Come on now. Or in Seattle. They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
Wow.
But let me just ask
you. You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big.
Just a second, David.
I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
Man.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
Are working hard.
I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember.
He never said that.
When it came to the Proud Boys, a militia.
No fact checker.
The president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you.
Right next to the dead babies.
For country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Pause right there. So
it was a different term, and it was a term.
Pause. Two things. Let's give her that the J6 was a violent thing. Let's give her the Charlottesville thing, or the Charlottesville, right?
Yeah.
Let's give her those two things. That's let's compare it to all the Black Lives Matter rallies that she never stopped,
and that she helped bail people out.
And that her governor, her vice president, oversaw. There was $2 billion in economic damage from Black Lives Matter's rallies. How many people died from the? So let's just compare. Okay,
police officers who were dying.
Police officers who died. Right. It's like it's not even a comparison.
Right. I think there were a few windows broken at the Capitol.
David Reese, you're about to explode. You may go now.
I can't. I mean, they're like, there's the January 6th. These are political prisoners. they're not being given process. There's a ridiculously long period of time where they're being held in prison without being given, a body of charges to be able to deal with. I mean, just this thing, like we have a government that is hunting down people that it thinks are enemies of the state based upon their political allegiances. And they have the gall. She has the gall to bring it up as though it's a Trump problem. So, and the fact checkers, I'm sure they're about to get to it. They're about to say, actually, Kamala, this is,
That's about the right reaction.
Well, that's the other thing about this, like the J6. Again, let's compare the J6 thing to a Black Lives Matter rally. Did the cops let the Black Lives Matter rallies into Minnesota and just like, hey, come in and destroy our buildings?
Yeah, set it on fire.
Did they open the doors to their buildings? Did they open doors to the police buildings?
To all the Black Lives Matter rallies? I mean, because it was only for like months.
Yeah, right.
I got a comparison to make.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't let the Charlottesville thing go. The first thing I would say is, what you're concerned about a couple, some guys in tiki torches in Charlottesville 7 years ago. What about the thousands of anti-Semitic pro-Hamas mobs that have taken over every Ivy League school in America for the last almost a year now? I mean, October 7th of last year was almost a year ago. We've seen like out and out Hamas is a terrorist organization. The Palestinian people are run by and harbor a terrorist organization. Look, people can have a lot of different, debates about, what Israel's doing, et cetera, all that. But still, that stands. And, you want to litigate Charlottesville. What about the last year of rampant pro-Hamas anti-Semitism on all your college campuses, Kamala?
There we go. That's good.
This is not going to work in her favor.
I'm excited.
This is one of the best moves that could happen for Trump, is because this is one of the most, especially the one in Charlottesville. That's been covered so much. Seriously. That a simple search.
I think Snopes even.
Snopes did when they do it.
Yeah,
so this
Snopes.
is. I know what her strategy is. Greg, before we go back, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Just that you're exactly right. I mean, she's going back 7 years. William said. Farther than that, she's using the same trope that Hillary Clinton tried to use, the silver platter, $400 million. You got money from your daddy. Like, what is this? Is this 2015? What are we doing here?
Yeah,
facts. All right, I'm going to get back to the debate. I'm going to talk about her strategy in just a minute. Keep going.
That related to energy, because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, one Charlottesville. That story has been, as you would say, debunked.
Yes.
Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these
CrossPolitic.
They covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect.
It
was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all. I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders. And we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them.
Check his pockets. I want his pockets checked.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Yeah. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. Wow. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president.
He's doing good for 2-on-1.
Yeah.
So he still believes he did not lose the election. That was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
What kind of question?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing.
Run.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as vice president of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused.
Same argument as Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
Not going to work.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy.
Come on.
He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office.
Yep.
And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. He got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
wow,
to the
that was
Israel-Hamas
amazing.
war, and the hostages were still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would.
Remove Greg from stage.
And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately. And the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution.
Greg, get my shirt ready.
In that solution, there must be
Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare.
We had to jump. That's fine. Hit pause real quick.
Hit pause. You're going to keep Obamacare.
We just had to jump. Did anybody want to respond since we just had to jump in the feed?
In the stream, yeah.
You guys want to respond at all? Greg, I want my Run Spot Run shirt ready. David, go ahead.
I'm going to buy one of those. Greg, give me one. Extra large.
Yeah.
I'll bring them down to Fight Laugh Feast.
Yes.
Hey, William, did you have anything you want to add to that before we move?
I just have to say that, like, watching Kamala Harris's like facial expressions and listening to her, she is the epitome of a smarmy Marxist HR girl boss. I mean, This is Gen Z boss in a mini or whatever, 5'3" with an attitude. And I think like men all across America, particularly ones who've been in any sort of corporate world, know that in their bones watching this. And so I hope, if anything else, if nothing else, this debate is turning off independent swing voters, particularly male swing voters in critical states right now.
I hope that the men who are voting for Harris can feel their testosterone leaving their bodies every time she talks, because I lose brain cells listening to her.
What do you make? Just throw this question out there. What do you guys make of the whole French voting for Kamala thing? I guess I'll start with
William's up. William's already ready for this one. William's got the guns loaded. Go.
What do I make? Like, look, French is a jilted lover, right? Like, in his own mind, he was left at the altar of American conservatism and American evangelicalism when the nightmare threat of Trump rode into town, and he was the only one speaking up against it. The man is motivated, I think, by petty jealousy and like this white knight mentality. And when he says that he's going to vote for Kamala to save conservatism, I actually think that he means it, because what he means is conserving the neoliberal, neocon American order, right? Like, so like he actually is going to vote for Kamala because she represents the ideals that he embodies. He's given up the ghost on defending marriage. He's given up, the principles of defending against drag queen story hour and transgenderism. I mean, the guy is just a leftist at this point. So I tweeted a second ago, I said, here's a horrifying thought. There are grown men who serve as pastors and evangelical leaders who are getting giddy watching Kamala Harris right now.
Oh, man. Man.
David?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot. I mean, voting for Kamala Harris, it's just plainly sin. It's wicked. I mean, she is obviously a violator of the standard for qualification of Exodus 18:21, which requires you to be a man, fail. Also requires you to be competent, fail. Requires you to hate covetousness, fail. It requires you to fear God, fail. requires you to love the truth fail. So I don't think Trump is qualified either. So I can't, in good conscience, vote there. But I mean,
David, do you think it's a sin to vote for Trump, like you think it would be for Kamala?
What's that?
Do you think it's a sin to vote for Trump, like you just said, it would be a sin to vote for Kamala?
I do, because I think Exodus 18:21 gives us a qualification set that we have to apply to evaluate candidates. So I think it's a duty to only vote for those who are qualified. And so I think that Exodus 18:21 gives to you a set of qualifications that you have to apply. Obviously, Kamala Harris is a horrible Marxist woman and is a wicked ruler of the worst type. But I also believe that Donald Trump is not qualified based upon the Exodus 18:21 test.
Would you excommunicate someone from your church for voting for Trump?
I don't have the power to solely excommunicate people on the like my whims. Sure. I think a person supporting, I think any sin unrepented of ultimately leads to, especially if it's publicly asserted, ultimately leads to a need to deal with discipline. No preacher has the right to do anything other than to equally apply the law. So the question is that true? Does Exodus 18:21 set out a set of qualifications for civil office, or does it not? If it does, then we need to consider whether or not people we are voting for meet those qualifications.
Up next.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say very quickly, too, I wanted to give a shout out to Davis because earlier Trump was talking about the lawsuits and judges just basically dismissing them with no standing. Davis was talking about that a year and a half ago on national news media, on my program, on your program. So there are people out there talking about it, and Trump was correct in that when those judges, and I would say if you look at some of those cases, and I'm not an attorney, Davis is, they just rejected them with no standing when, in fact, they didn't even go to discovery or anything.
Mm-hmm. Do we have our spot back? William, do you want to add anything to that? Or you want to join that conversation? Because I feel like in one sense, this debate would almost be better than the one that we have right now going in front of us.
I mean, I think I just disagree with that analysis. Like, I think this is where I fundamentally disagree with any brother out there who is saying and making a one-to-one application of principles that we're seeing in the Old Testament, about rulers of the covenantal people of Israel to the American political system today. I mean, I would just also point out that those individuals in Exodus 18 weren't actually elected. That was advice that Jethro was giving to Moses for appointments that Moses, along with counsel of others, would be unilaterally making. So I don't subscribe to that theology in terms of undergirding a principle for voting as Christians in America in 2024.
I think we should just have a whole show where you guys both come back and we talk about, can you vote for Trump or not? That is where I want to. Can I just get you guys willing to come back and we can have that conversation? I love to have that conversation.
I'd happily do it.
Okay, there we go. That's set. Next week, we're going to have our Spot Run shirts on for that debate. All right. Let's keep playing.
Chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
Wow, that's a strong one.
She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting
You can't
in
even fix
highest
the
regard
border.
our
What are you talking about,
military.
national
Vice President
security?
Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country.
There you go.
Their crime rates are way down. Yeah. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. Yep. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia.
William, you got your mouth open. Go ahead. Can we just turn the volume down? We'll come back with this.
William, go.
No, I just was breathing out that we've got so much more to cover.
Do we?
We might have to skip ahead.
Can we?
I would just point out very quickly, too, notice the words that Harris is using. Instead of saying fact, she's saying well-known.
Yeah.
It's just those little type of things where you see Democrats, progressives, leftists, they won't use the real word. They'll use something like it. It'll give them an out. But, that's not too awfully important. But it's just, keep an eye on that stuff. What they say is very important, and kind of read through the lines of what words they're using too. I don't want to interrupt anybody, but one of the things I noticed in her strategy early on, she started doing this, was Trump said, if I remember correctly, that he had exceptions for rape and incest and abortion.
Kamala comes up and just steamrolls him and says, you don't have any exceptions for rape or incest. Yeah. And he says something else, and then she comes right behind him and says, they're 2025. Oh, that's 2025. He's like, I'm not 2025. That's not my thing. Yeah. Then she comes back on and directly labels him 2025, hard hitting. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I get it. She's playing for the clip. She's not having the debate with Trump. Yeah. She's playing for the short piece of social media that it looks like she's winning. So there's no context for it. Yeah. She's playing so that she can get that social media hit. Say, whoa, Kamala looks strong. And she's done that the whole debate every time. Trump's like, that's not my thing. I don't believe in that. Here's my plan. Here's what we're doing. And so she's coming out and she's playing for the real. Yeah. It's kind of a brilliant.
I think Trump's played kind of into her. Trump's been responding to her, at least the first half or quarter of the debate, whatever we watched. Trump's been the one responding. He's been the one on his heels. And Kamala's been a little more on the offensive.
I think that analysis is right, Gabe. Here's a couple thoughts, and that's one, Kamala, I think, frankly, has exceeded expectations so far, right? I mean, we've all seen such ridiculous clips of her being unable to string together 3 coherent sentences. But so what could that be attributed to? Well, you know how like you have somebody that's not like the best player on the team, but you surround them with some better talent, and then to kind of maybe rise to the occasion? That's the debate moderators in this situation. The moderators, I think Kamala is emboldened by and is feeding off of them, creating what's obvious to everyone to see, which is a 3-versus-1 environment. Now, Trump is a good debater. I think he's on his heels. I think no matter how good of a debater you are, how good of a politician you are, if you're on a 3-versus-1 environment, you're going to be put back. And so I think whatever's left in this debate, as much as Trump can try to go on the offense, that will help him. I will say this, though, when we pull the camera back out and we ask, what does this impact in the presidential election? The major swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia, is either one of them winning independent voters here? I think on the issues of immigration and economy and foreign policy where Trump is strong, I think if he continue to hammer that, he will. Kamala, I don't think, is doing anything but ginning up her base on her abortion attacks. Oh, yeah. And so the impact of this, I think might, quite frankly, be somewhat negligible on the race if it continues like this.
It's now a good time to jump forward about 20 minutes.
You're just going to do that?
Well, I mean, we're streaming live here. The law of debate's been.
Let's take a vote.
Just keep going.
You can't just quit.
Is everyone happy where we're at? I'm happy to stay where we're at.
Let's go, man.
I want to see how
Davis
it goes.
Yuntz, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I think that strategically she was working really, really hard to get under his skin, do some direct attacks to try to get him to react, and he didn't take the bait. And I do think she's kind of backed off of that a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if she goes back to that strategy at all, because I know she's trying to get under his skin and get, sort of a off the cuff reaction from him that they can use as well. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Let's keep going. I don't want to skip. Let's go.
Okay.
Go.
Has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take
they don't like that answer.
Don't like that answer on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as commander-in-chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Whoa! Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow.
So good.
Much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. and the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strong men instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first
William,
hour.
I'm looking at your face.
I want to move on.
Do you want to say anything, William, at this point?
Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'll say something briefly on Ukraine. Sure. I mean, Trump is absolutely right. Well, first of all, Kamala says the most important thing in international norms is sovereignty and territorial integrity. Yep. What about ours?
Come on now.
What about America's
Preach,
sovereignty?
man.
That's right.
What about America's territorial integrity as we've let 3 to 4, if not more, millions of illegal immigrants come in under this administration? Not even talking about the total that's come in over the last few decades, if it's not more than that. So sovereignty and territorial integrity for Ukraine, but not for America. If we could have some of that at home, that would be great. But Trump is absolutely right in the sense that I don't think that this war would have started if he had been reelected. Weakness is something certainly that Putin takes advantage of and manipulates. And he's absolutely right that this is the Europeans' responsibility to deal with, and they refuse to do it. At every turn, every action the Biden administration has taken has only served to exacerbate and extend this war. And this is actually, it's funny, I wish Trump could bring some of this moral clarity to the abortion debate issue, because he actually gets it when it comes to civilian casualties and military casualties in the war in Ukraine. We've lost hundreds of thousands of lives that don't need to be lost in this fight, that and a negotiated end is the right answer. He's going to be dinged for not outright saying he wants Ukraine to win, but he's actually taking the right position there, which is we need a negotiated settlement of this war. There's really not a winner or a loser when it comes down to it. It's ending the war.
Let's go.
One of the big accomplishments that Trump also had here, earlier on, he was talking briefly about the NATO thing, pushing the allies to actually start paying their piece. That was amazing. Like that work to push the others to actually fill their side of the covenant was an amazing thing. And I think that idea that you can push on other people and make it so they don't take for granted, is a powerful thing. But that right there did not get commented on or get the emphasis I think it deserved when he just got passed over in the comment or the moderators, and obviously Kamala didn't deal with that at all. But that was a big Trump moment.
It was.
The 28 countries at the time to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be Commander-in-Chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them.
I got you, Davis.
And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people,
I bet you do.
The worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
Hit pause. Davis, I saw you had your hand up. I got to know. I got to know what you were going to say, Davis. Go ahead.
Oh, there's so much to say here, but I will start with this. When the Afghanistan withdrawal happened, it was an absolute debacle. It was the last time I wore a uniform as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserves. I was on orders for the last time before they stopped letting me go on orders because of COVID when that happened. Okay. It was devastating to military members to watch this administration, this commander-in-chief, fail in the way they did. Understand, I joined the military when 9/11 happened, because 9/11 happened in law school. I was a true believer. I was somewhat brainwashed by the neocons, but that's why I joined to serve. I wasn't in Afghanistan, but I was in the Middle East supporting Operation Enduring Freedom. I was involved in that fight. And to see what happened there, it was so bad among everyone. I was at the JAG school on orders teaching at the Air Force JAG school. Our commandant stopped everything, brought us all together, and the room was silent. No one even knew what to say because we all looked at the 20 years that we had been fighting and doing this in Afghanistan as failure because of the way we pulled out. So there's a lot more I could say on that, but just to say this was I mean, you could go for a lot of reasons, but this was an absolute abject failure. It was absolute weakness. It is true when Trump says there were not casualties caused by the Taliban for 18 months in Afghanistan while he was president. That is true because he threatened them with force if they didn't stop killing our people. And to say there's no one in harm's way and no one in combat situations today in the military, that's what she said. That is a lie. The Houthis, these Iran-backed groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, they are attacking our bases. They're attacking our bases in Syria, Iraq. There are people in harm's way. There are people getting injured. By the grace of God, some people haven't been killed, but there are people in harm's way in Africa and other places. Those things aren't true. So I just, I wish the moderators wouldn't just move on from this. I wish they would focus on this. But I can say, as someone who served under President Trump, who served under Biden, the actual military leaders that aren't political have absolute respect for what Trump was trying to do in Afghanistan, the results that he did get, and see it as an absolute disgrace and wonder why we sacrificed everything we did for so long because of the way we pulled out of Afghanistan.
It is a pretty amazing line when he says, to the leader of the Taliban,
a picture of your house.
He says, "Why are you showing me a picture of my house?" And Trump says, maybe you'll figure it out." I mean, he's kind of a Godfather move. I'm watching you.
Yeah. Wolf, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, great. Great points. I was working at the State Department and the Department of Defense when we were negotiating the settlement, right? So it's like, how do we get out of Afghanistan without letting the Taliban completely take over, and strengthening the Afghan government, the Afghan security forces? And what Kamala is failing to note is that it was a conditions-based withdrawal. One of those conditions were that our American service members were not being targeted and killed by the Afghanistans. This is a point that we pushed regularly. Mike Pompeo, our special representative, Khalilzad as well. And what happened, and on the point of Camp David, whether it was wise to bring the Taliban to Camp David or not, the Taliban absolutely had to be at the negotiating table. After 20 years, the Taliban still had a significant presence of the control, the hearts and minds of many of the Afghanistan people. So when you're negotiating a conditions-based withdrawal of the United States military presence from Afghanistan, you had to have the United States, the Taliban, and the Afghanistan government at the table. You had to do that. But what the Biden administration did was they came in and they just let all the conditions go and then pulled out, left the equipment, left interpreters, left tons of people in harm's way. Yeah. And so, how the agreement would have stood the test of time under a different administration is something we don't know. But I do know that what the Biden administration did was they let all the conditions go and just pulled out, and it was an absolute disaster.
People forget. And we know a lot of guys who are veterans who got back into planes, got their gear, and went to go get people who were citizens of America and who were also interpreters and their families who had given up so much to help us out there and find them places to escape from. People forget that was what happened.
I remember our friend Chad Rubishow was raising money and chartering private, big, jets. They're cargo jets to go out there and rescue a bunch of American refugees. The other thing I wanted to bring up here was, so let's say Trump brought that he did to Camp David. Well, President Xi came and visited Newsom in California. Right.
That was a good thing. They got him to clean it up.
But here, if I was a Christian, I'd be inviting these guys to sit at my table. To have real conversations with them. Right. It's what you do with it. It's not that fact that necessarily they invite them here. Right. It's kind of a stupid point, but it works sort of.
I would just say very quickly, too, to back up Davis's point, there's a survey from Change Research that just came out, shows Trump up 10% for support over with veterans and active duty. And that's what he was up in 2016 and ended up winning that segment by 19 points, I believe. So for all this rhetoric and that same trope of he hates the military, he says bad things about him, they sure do seem to support him and turn out and vote for him.
That's a good point. Back to the debate.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. Yeah. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
Wow.
But are you black?
Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people.
Unburdened by
knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris.
My favorite color is green.
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible. One who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President Harris, forward. Thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she has a plan to not allow fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay,
that's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to respond. The former president has something that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Right. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Always was. Yep. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be? Never going to be great. Or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. If I had a choice to make, do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged
here we go.
as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night.
I hated John
Walked
McCain
onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. Yeah. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it. Pass his pro-law in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important.
Pause it. Notice there, all of her things like the $50,000, the down payment help, the child tax credit, government health care, all of it is only going to make our economy worse. That's right. It's only going to make everything more expensive. Right. It only, like the price caps, it's not like the prices go away. Yeah. It has to come somewhere. And so someone else ends up paying for it. All of these things, even the law, requiring health insurance companies to take pre-existing conditions. You're not allowing that to work its way out in a free market economy. And I understand that can be a real hardship in some situations, which is why churches and private businesses and families need to be the primary ones helping families in those positions. But when you do that, you're driving the prices up. Everything she's talking about is talking about making inflation worse, making prices go higher, all of that. You can't just command things to be cheaper.
Yeah, government takes your money. Yeah. And when they turn it back into the economy, they're driving inflation up. They aren't producing goods and services
making anything
that counter that spending of the dollars. I got a bunch of closing thoughts actually on all this.
Reese, I saw your face. Your teeth were about to fall out your mouth.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. So, I mean, basically, just constantly talking about giving stuff away. Obamacare is just a stealing of our rights. I mean, it shouldn't exist at all. There shouldn't be subsidies on it. I mean, we all know. I mean, we're all old enough to remember healthcare before it was the post office, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's right. Like you walk in now, it's just like everybody there can't stand to be there. Like I remember nurses and doctors that cared about you. Like, you know, and so there's this pushing out, like there's a pushing out of people from the socialism light that keeps growing and it becomes less and less light. The socialism problem that is growing in the medical system. And what's happening is this combination of stuff, right? This idea of government negotiating with private business, the moving more and more towards a single payer type of system. Negotiations when there's only one payer aren't negotiations; they're coercion. Right. You know, and so you just got this constantly growing mechanism of state control. The hospitals were built by Christians. They have been stolen by a constantly expanding government presence there, and so these problems are just ridiculous, and just the constant listing of stuff to give away for free. That's not you. Government's role is not to just give us a bunch of free stuff,
and it's not free. It's not free. We're all paying for it, and it's all going to come out though in your taxes. It's going to come out in how much everything costs.
Right, and it makes you a slave.
All right, you guys want a little bit of deep lore insight from?
I was coming to you.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Yes.
So Obama sweeps in 2008, massive. He's got House. He's got the Senate. And this is an interesting point. What do the Democrats do with the power that they've accumulated, even though it might cost them, and it does cost them politically? They use it to secure a massive legislative win for their constituency. Obamacare fuels the rise of the Tea Party. They lose the House, huge wave. So we hit 2010, and now Republicans are in control. Heritage Action at the time had just been launched, and one of their top priorities was getting the House Republicans to commit to overturning Obamacare. They go in, some of the representatives, into a meeting with Boehner and Cantor and McCarthy there in 2010, and they're saying, okay, we're going to get a discharge petition on repealing Obamacare. This is actually maybe before they took over, from getting this twisted a little bit. But the Republican leaders didn't want it. From the very first stages, from behind the scenes, the Republicans actually weren't all that opposed to Obamacare. And so that's just a little bit of insight of how the regime works, the uniparty system works, is that it was twisting arms from conservative groups on the outside to even get Republicans to fight Obamacare was a fight they didn't want for a decade. And then, of course, McCain destroys it, keeps it alive at the end of it. And so I think Trump is right when he says, like, what's the better option? We're in a total mess right now with the healthcare system in America and sort of what we call comprehensive healthcare reform, getting the government out of it, getting it back into the hands of private markets, free market competition. That's going to be a massive effort. And quite frankly, no matter what Trump wants, I don't know if the constituency exists for that amongst our federal elected representatives.
Well, that was encouraging.
And don't forget, John McCain was a casting vote. He was the deciding vote on Obamacare.
Wow.
Neocons.
Play.
Important for a lot. Made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you.
I hate this question.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home
Ducks
insurance.
are dying from the weather. Oh, wait, that's the Haitians.
Anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. They're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
I'm glad we got popcorn ready.
Yeah.
Closing statement.
They're 10 minutes each. Is closing statement 10 minutes each?
I hope not.
Jacob, do you know how long closing statement was? 2 minutes each. 2 minutes each. Okay.
Guys, from the panel, 2 minutes. From the panel, is there anything you guys want to add before they come back for their closing statements? I see, William, you're gearing up. I'll start with you.
I got a bunch for closing. My closing statement.
Look, I'll just say I hear that Trump's closing statement is good, But look, I mean, all Kamala had to do was perform better than the under-medicated husk of Joe Biden.
You better preach.
To clear. I think at this point in the debate, we can say she cleared it. But you know what? I think Trump did just fine, especially for 3v1. I don't think this moves the needles with undecided voters in swing states that matter. The media will salivate it over it. That's not going to change things. So I think that's where it stands right now. You could essentially call it more or less a tie.
Do you think there's going to be a second debate, William?
I hear that Kamala's already asking for one, so I'm not sure. I mean, it's September. We've got we've got 2 months to go, so that puts us probably sometime in like October for a debate. I don't know if Trump's going to want to give it to her, particularly after a format like this. We'll see.
I think she needs a second debate.
Greg, what do you got?
I was just wondering, can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, maybe ask some of the panel too. Do you think it was on purpose that he keeps referring to her as Joe Biden and Joe Biden? And I mean, it seems like he brought his name up more than Kamala's. Maybe William can answer that. Do you think that was on purpose, or do you think he was just been so focused on Biden, it's just natural slip?
Well, I would think that would be intentional, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's amazing that Kamala is acting like she's not been the vice president of the United States for the last almost 4 years now. So I think Trump is right to present to the American people that he's running against Joe Biden's record and Kamala Harris's record. So I hope and think it was intentional and probably useful.
Cool.
No, I absolutely think that was the case. I mean, that's what she has to. I was thinking about this before the show started. She has to admit that what they did was good. And so if that's the case, then she has to bring on and say, this is going to be the next level of what we think is good. So she has to, say, hey, and he knows that. And so he's cutting it off at the legs to say, hey, if you like this, if you think the last 4 years have been amazing, have been phenomenal with Joe Biden, you're going to get Joe Biden 2.0 with her. So I agree. I think that's very intentional. David, you're sitting up there looking like you were holding it in, bro. What is up?
Climate change, this ridiculous stuff about climate change. I mean, the idea, first of all, if the world heated up some, that would be great. We would have so much more increased arable land. I mean, Canada would be useful, and so would Russia. All of a sudden, Siberia becomes a useful territory. The Chinese can conquer it, And so
I love David.
This whole thing. Also, when ice melts, it takes up less space. So the rising sea thing, I don't know. Also, if this is a real thing, just pour iron pellets in the ocean and grow algae. This is easy. Why is this a thing? Why are we pretending like we should establish some socialist regime to govern the world so that we can make sure that our cars are less efficient? I don't understand how this is still a thing. So the earth worship is something that I just can't handle.
I like it when there are things that David can't handle.
Yeah.
It makes everything more fun and interesting.
It helps me handle it.
Here we are. We're back, guys. I want to hear their closing statements. Here we go.
Here we go.
The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world and from all of us here.
You can get some cut.
So I got a number of closing thoughts.
But I want to hear from the panel first.
Yep, let's go.
I want to give them the chance to give their closing thoughts about the whole debate.
First.
Oh, well, that is uncaused for, Gabe. Davis, you've probably spoken the less, so at least I'm going to give you the opportunity to go first, and then we'll go Davis, Greg, David, and then Wolf.
Listen, overall, I think a couple of things stood out to me. I think the debate was essentially a tie. I think Vice President Harris did what she needed to do as far as meeting a very low bar. But there's other takeaways. This is a biased media. This was not well moderated. They only fact checked President Trump, not Vice President Harris. So moving forward, debate formats are something Trump needs to think about. He's going to do it. Again, I don't think this made a huge difference. I think Trump didn't take the bait, despite personal attacks, which I think was a positive. But I think the bigger question we have to ask ourselves as Christians, as a nation, as we think about what we just heard and what went on, one is, listen, if we understand the history of the progressive movement, if we understand the history of relativism, moral relativism, all of that, we see that there was one person on the stage tonight who clearly did not care anything for the truth. It was about accomplishing an agenda. And that's a consequence of our nation. We are seeing flawed people running for office because our churches have failed and we as a nation are failing. So the people deserve leaders that are flawed. I do think one side in this debate, I think Vice President Harris just had no even modicum of shame for sticking to the truth or spreading lies or going back and spreading old lies, looking for those sound bites. So biggest takeaway is I think it's overall a tie. I think there was red meat for the base on both sides. I was glad President Trump didn't take the bait. He was strong on immigration. That was a good point for him. But overall, I don't think it moves the needle very much.
Greg?
Yeah, I have to echo what Davis said, as well as what William said earlier. Same thing, 3 verse 1, like William was saying. Let's remember too that in those debate negotiations, they take out the audience, because probably the audience is one of the biggest positives for Trump. That in studio reaction, he does so well in front of people. So you have the media only correcting, fact checking one person. You have no studio audience, right? All these things, to where they really are trying to push a narrative and be one-sided. I think for independents, that 30% in the middle, I don't know if it moves the needle, just like William said. I would say this, though, Trump's a populist candidate. I think personally we saw him flip on Amendment 4 in Florida because he saw the outrage from his right flank of abolitionists and voters and said, okay, well, no. And look in the Old Testament, God used populist kings. They weren't the best all the time to accomplish his will. So I'm encouraged. If Trump wins, I think stay strong. I think we can still get some things done that we need to do at the federal level, as long as we have a voice and we stay active in that and stand on godly principle.
Robert, going over to William, we got about 4,000 people streaming live, and I'd love to hear in the comments, who do you think won or lost, or I'd love to hear those comments. Go ahead, William.
Yeah, well, so first I want to say I'm surprised that the moderators didn't get a chance to give closing statements themselves.
You better say that. That was good.
That was good.
I've been sitting on that one for a while.
Yes.
But honestly, I think the moderators made a crucial mistake when it comes to executing presidential debates. They inserted themselves into it, and they've made the story about them. A lot of the media headlines, as much as it will try to spin for Kamala, will also be focused on the moderators, which quite frankly is a disservice to the American people, and a reminder that no matter how much you might think you hate journalists, you don't hate them enough.
Amen.
Now on to Kamala, in particular her closing statement. That I want to focus on that phrase, we're not going back. That is such a loaded phrase. It's truly a revolutionary phrase. It's the idea that we are completely unencumbered by anything that has come before us, behind us, and all we're moving through into is perpetual revolution of the myth of inevitable progress, whether that's in humanity or in America. Quite frankly, though, Kamala, what does it mean? Where are we going to? I have no idea. If you're driving the bus, I have no idea if you even have a map or a plan to take us to your opportunity economy. She got let off the hook over and over again. She wasn't pressed on the border. She wasn't pressed on the economy. She wasn't pressed on some of the most radical positions that the Democrats hold, including transgenderism, what's happening in our nation's schools with the radical LGBT agenda, students being taken away from their parents. She wasn't questioned about the pro-life protesters who are being prosecuted under the FACE Act, and a grandma facing 7 years in jail. So they ran cover for her. I think Trump nailed it in his closing statement, saying, why hasn't she done this already? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The American people are faced right now with what's called an A-B test. You got A for 4 years. You got B for 4 years. Which one do you want for 4 more years going forward? I think that choice is clear. We'll see what the American people have to say, particularly in the swing states with the Obama-Trump voters. And hopefully we'll see if Trump is able to generate enough support and votes to overcome the cheating that I'm sure we know will happen. I think at the end of the day, I'll concur with the other panelists that this was probably a tie, but I think that Trump will continue to build momentum as he's building, and we'll see if a second debate happens.
That's good. David?
Yeah, I think obviously people are becoming more and more aware of the way that the media is biased. It's an obvious thing. It's a trope amongst the right. So that being the case, I think seeing this, if you watch the whole of it, it's obvious that it's just this pressure move of 3-on-1. At the same time, I think that most people are not going to see the whole debate. I do think that we are going to see the soundbiting be used, the propaganda machine of trying to manipulate a audience that is uninformed, the repetition of things that have easily been debunked. That's the whole mechanism, right? So cheating, propaganda, and trying to import votes, right? That's the mechanism for victory. So apart from that, I think obviously Donald Trump's policies are vastly superior. I think in terms of debate performance, he had a number of great things. And sadly, the whole thing was stacked against him at the beginning. The focus on abortion, which was his weak point. He doesn't do well on it because he's not standing on a firm line, but also the difficulty of having a woman moderator and a woman candidate pushing on him. He's uncomfortable in that. So some of his best moments are sort of stacked in the middle. And so that's also less likely to be seen by people. So, but I think there are a number of great places, the firing moment, the discussion about NATO, the stuff like that. So those are things I want to point out. I want to encourage the people that are listening to think about the fact that very little was talked about in terms of the Constitution in this, right? Article 2 of the Constitution about the executive power that exists. You know, the job description of the president that comes from the Constitution is something that's very little focused on, and the limits on federal power laid out in Article 1, Section 8 in terms of the powers of Congress are not dealt with very much. And so I would like to encourage people who are listening to check those out. You'll be shocked at the limited state that was established for the federal government. In addition to that, I really do think, again, Exodus 18:21 lays out the biblical set of standards to be considered for who to vote for. And the text simply reads, "Moreover, you shall select from among all the people able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers." And so I would encourage everybody to think about those qualifications laid out in the Word of God for civil magistrates.
It's a shame.
And that debate's happening next week. I'm looking forward to that one.
We can put that together.
You got to put that one together, Gabe. All right. Gabe, you said you had a bunch of stuff on your piece of paper.
You got a sermon for us?
So first of all, we are like in this postmodern debate.
You said that like 3 or 4 times.
We're so far from anyone pointing to any sort of absolute truth in debate.
Right.
And so
this is like mud wrestling.
It's just mud wrestling. It's just, I'm for 15 weeks abortion. I'm for 8 months abortion. It's just like, who cares? There's no truth to be able to figure that out. Yeah, exactly. It's really childish, these kind of debates. Secondly, this is where I think Trump failed. You don't debate, but he fails there because he's a postmodernist. You don't debate within their framework. You don't debate within their, set of standards, within their worldview, within their, is Obamacare a legitimate form of, healthcare or not? Once you debate within their framework, you've lost. And so many times, Trump got pulled into debating within Kamala's framework, talking about Obamacare, talking about child tax credit, talking about climate change, like all those things. You're just jumping right into their framework, and you're going to lose. You can't. You have to appeal to something higher in the debate, and that's why you ultimately got to appeal to Jesus Christ. Now, there's really 3. The war stuff, all that stuff is, I think, important conversations, but I think that is still pretty foreign to Americans, meaning that what's happening over there does not affect us as much over here. The things that really affect us over here are the discussion on inflation, the discussion on abortion, and the discussion on the economy. Those are the things that affect us here.
Immigration.
Yeah, let me add that too. But even then, it's this postmodern debate. We're talking about abortion. There's no standard there. There's no definition of what is life. There's no definition. Trump multiple times should have said, if abortion's not murder, then sure, Kamala, you can be a man. There's multiple ways to tie the lunacy of 9-month abortion. He did a pretty good job a little bit on the kind of the 9-month stuff.
I think you're assuming that the rest of the audience can think.
Follow that argument.
Yeah. Fair point. And then you talk about inflation. This is where Trump is jumping inside that liberal framework, her framework, not a principled framework, where they're talking about inflation. And Trump's response is, I'm going to lower taxes and I'm going to raise tariffs. And don't forget that both Trump and Kamala passed stimulus bills in their administrations. In fact, Trump passed $5 trillion in stimulus packages. Kamala only passed, I think, $2 or $3 trillion. So Trump, if anything, is more responsible for inflation. And this is where we got to be honest Christians about the reality of what's going on. You can't let Trump get away thinking that, inflation's not all my fault.
Right.
You have a lot to blame about inflation. Now, granted, the Biden administration has made it worse. They've raised regulations, all that stuff. They've absolutely, I think, made it worse. But you can't let them out of that. And then lastly, the economy thing. Again, the same thing's happening here. You're jumping into Kamala's world, where she wants the government to pay and fix everything. And she wants the government to pay, and so Trump or J.D. Vance and Kamala are having this battle. Oh, we'll do $5,000 in tax credits. Well, the next day, what the next day? Kamala comes out with $6,000.
They're bidding.
I beat you.
They're bidding for votes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And all we're doing,
vote. And we're a cheap vote.
Cheap vote. And all we're doing is we're buying into the idea that our government's the savior, and that we're feeling we don't see the envy creeping into our own little souls with these kind of things.
Right.
And we don't see the envy and the Ten Commandment breaking of stealing in this thing.
Right. We're stealing from our neighbors.
Stealing from our neighbors.
Yeah.
She wants to give my neighbor $25,000 for a down payment to a house. She wants to give my neighbor $6,000 tax credit. She wants to give me, it's like, go down.
Right.
And apparently, and you guys are going to find out about this on Thursday because we got a pastor coming on the show. They're giving the immigrants and the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, he said multiple reports have said that each immigrant has about $20,000 on their card, on their debit cards that they're getting from the government.
What? They don't even need the cats.
Dang.
But they want them.
But they want them. That's right, William.
The point is the government is giving your money to illegal immigrants, and you can't have a problem with that if you don't have a problem with the $25,000 going to your neighbor for down payment.
Right.
So the problem is like when you watch these debates, you have to constantly pull yourself out of what they're talking about and try to think objectively about this is what it means to be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm not going to let this influence my thinking. I'm going to let God's word influence my thinking, and then that's going to be the standard at which I apply both Trump's arguments and Kamala arguments. I'm going to measure those arguments up to God's word.
Right.
And this is something very important, and so that you won't be moved by what Trump says, or you won't be moved by what Kamala has. What does God's word say?
Right. I'll give my 2 cents, and then you can close us out.
I'm very simple. So I don't have a lot to say.
Well, that's why you can close us out then.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to go really quick. I agree with a lot of that's already been said. I started this all off by saying I thought that this was going to be mostly entertaining, and I also think that if we were to take it too seriously, it would also be really sad.
That's right.
Because the level of our public discourse has fallen so significantly.
That's right.
And we put up with this.
That's right.
Somebody said it earlier. It was Dusty Devers when he was on. That above every abortion clinic should be a sign permitted, here by permission of the church.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is going on when you have a debate like this, here by permission of the church.
Yeah, that's right.
The church has failed to disciple its people.
Yeah.
We have put up for decades with stupid songs, with stupid sermons, and incompetent pastors.
Yeah.
And we
have been for sale.
We have insisted on it.
Yeah.
And the prophets say that this is what will happen. People will demand. We do not want to be told the truth. Mm-hmm. We do not want to be told the hard truth about what God's word says, all of it, the problem of our sin, the problem of our rebellion. We want them to say nice things to us. They want them to tickle our ears. We want it to be popular, cool, respectable, and accepted by the world. We want the praise of man. And we live by that rather than the fear of God.
That's right.
And so we have asked for this, and so we've been given it.
We deserve this kind of debate.
Exactly.
It's postmodern mush.
So on the debate itself, I think the closing statement, I think, probably was maybe Trump's strongest point. I think he should have been saying, "Why haven't you done this?"
The
entire debate. That was a little bit of a miss. I'm glad he got to it at the end and he pressed it hard. Of course, abortion wasn't a good place for him, other than the fact that I love the fact that he keeps bringing up the full-term abortions, the partial birth abortions, the birth, after the birth executions. Mm-hmm. That's the strong point there. But as everyone has said, it's also a really his weak point. Mm-hmm. Immigration, I think, is probably maybe one of his strongest things. It actually is it would actually be his job. So to your point, they're talking about a bunch of stuff. It's not even their job.
Yeah.
It actually is the executive's job
to protect the border,
to protect our borders. That's actually constitutional. And so that's a legitimate biblical exercise of civil magistrate authority. I think he should keep camping out on that. And by God's providence, you have the cats and the ducks and all the fun that is.
Yeah.
And then I think one missed opportunity I was going to mention on the abortion thing, which I haven't heard anybody say, but they keep on talking about women's right to protect their own body, except for COVID.
Yeah.
There's a massive schizophrenia here when it's like, no, but you have to put the mask on. Why? Well, because someone else is involved. Really? Suddenly another person matters. We need to get back to that. Lastly, I'll just say, I agree on, I'm looking forward to the debate that we're going to have with William and David on Exodus 18. But on that, I think at least one argument would be, even though Trump may not meet that standard of Exodus 18, he is going to be surrounded with a number of men who will. If you vote for Kamala, you're going to end up with a number of people. You're not going to end up with anybody in her cabinet,
pagans.
Anybody around her that is any remotely close to Exodus 18 qualifications.
They eat cats in private.
But Trump will have people in his entourage. And as was pointed out earlier, he is a populist. I do think he responded to people on Proposition 4 in Florida. I think he's sometimes
so Christian pro-life pressure works on him.
And I think there's other times he's unstable and it blows different directions. But I think the fact of the matter is if it can buy us a little bit of time, buy us a little bit more space to plead for God to give us reformation and revival in this land. I think it's worth chucking a vote that way, if only for the other people that will be around him that really are Exodus 18 men. Before I let you sign us off, I'm just going to also put a plug in for we are going to be in Dallas, Texas, for the Fight Laugh Feast conference.
Fort Worth.
I think most of the guys here on this stream are going to be there as well. October 31st to November 2nd, Reformation Weekend. The theme is Prodigal America.
That's right.
Calling America to repentance, calling America home to the Father. If we don't repent, this doesn't get better.
That's right.
Even if Trump wins, that's not the solution. We need a radical revival. And so we're having our Fight Laugh Feast conference there, October 31st, November 2nd. Go to prodigalamerica.com. Find out more about it. Dusty Devers will be speaking, George Grant, Steve Dace, Pastor Doug Wilson, and we'll be there as well. And
Greg Moore is hosting our media row for all the guys out there. Big media row. David Reese should be there. David Sion should be there. Man, I haven't heard from William Wolf.
I hope William's going to be there.
William's important.
We need fire-breathing Baptists there.
There are almost 4,500 people who are listening right now who are live streaming this show. I want to say thank you. I hope this has been valuable to you. We enjoyed spending that time with you. These men that have been on this panel, follow these guys. Follow David Reese. Follow William Wolf. Follow Dead Man Walking. Follow Davis Young. Follow who else?
Dusty Devers.
Dusty Devers. That's right.
Devers.
Yeah.
That's right. These men have helped me think and challenge my thought, and I don't always like what they say, and so it makes me think very thoughtful about my beliefs or where I'm taking it. And so follow these men. They're engaged in the fight, and there's a lot of wisdom with them. So very thankful to have these men on the panel. I have so many thoughts, but you're going to have to save and wait for those for another time.
What?
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's. I'll say this. I will say this.
Let's throw popcorn at you.
We deserve Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Would to God he give us Trump.
Yeah.
Would to God he give us Trump.
Yeah.
Because we deserve Kamala.
That would be mercy.
That would be mercy, and we don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
I'll save the rest of that for the rest of this week.
Okay. All right.
So if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you a bunch of kids, and you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, feast. This is CrossPolitic.
Woo! The American church really is gay.
Are you asking me out on a date?
Effeminate.
The Bible appears more to whisper when it comes to sexual sin.
Shallow.
I said, I want the African American 7.
And full of cowardly leaders.
Are we going to keep bickering over secondary issues?
America desperately needs to return to the Father. Either we fall on the rock and are broken, or we fall on the ground and are crushed under that rock. To fall on top of the rock and be broken is exactly the condition in which God brings reformation and revival. So which way is it, prodigal America? Are you coming home to the Father? Join us this Reformation Day in Fort Worth, Texas, October 31st through November 2nd at Will Rogers Event Center, just days before our presidential election. And join with the thousands of us for the blessing of gathering together with God's people and celebrating God's goodness with beer and psalms. Hear from speakers such as Dr. James White, Pastor Toby Sumter, Pastor Doug Wilson, Dr. George Grant, Gabe and Knox, Steve Dace, and more. Don't forget our Business Makers Conference, jumpy castles for the kiddos, after parties, single events, the pastor's luncheon, the business leaders luncheon, and many more surprises coming. America has squandered her inheritance far too long. It's time she repents and returns home to her Father. Fight, Laugh, Feast presents Prodigal America.